For the last 8 years, I've been inhabiting a small studio apartment ever since moving out of my mother's apartment at 18 years old. I won't go too far back into all my lore just yet because my backstory is admittedly pretty complicated, and I have stories within this story that I'd like to save maybe for separate videos. There's not really an easy way to say it other than I was struggling tremendously living at home with my mother. She was a difficult person to live with in terms of her being explosive, reactive, hypercritical, just overall a mean, toxic, angry person to have to grow up around as a child. More so when I started to develop opinions on my own and would attempt to stand up for myself. And no, going to my father wasn't an option, and even if it were, I wouldn't have chosen to do that. It's complicated. There was a number of issues going on in the background of my life that became extremely overwhelming for me to deal with on my own. I didn't have a supportive or emotionally available mother or father to go to for help, so I kept a lot of my pain, or all of my pain and issues, just bottled up for the longest time. After a series of events that happened to me around the time I was 16 years old, the amount of stress that I accumulated and didn't address just became unbearable. It feels like such an understatement to just say I hit my breaking point and I had the worst mental breakdown of my life at that time. I never felt worse, and I was aware that I was so young and should be so full of life, but I felt so exhausted and anxious and heavy, like I was carrying weights around with me all the time. I may have been brought up in a way that made me loathe myself, and at most times I did. But somewhere in me I knew that this wasn't a way of living and that I deserved so much better. I knew I needed help. It feels like there's a lot that I'm leaving out, but I had been working since I was 15, and after jumping through different hoops, I managed to save up enough money to put towards moving out at 18. And I'm telling you, I strategized so hard beforehand. I wrote down game plans in my notes. I wrote down all the different ways I could make money at different jobs because, mind you, not long before moving out, I had basically just found the job that I'd end up keeping long term. I wrote down how many hours I'd have to work to support myself and my future bills. I was determined to make this happen. I was trembling, but simultaneously confident in a way that I could do this. But attempting to move out on my own at 18 with no credit was difficult. I hadn't even had my job at that point for even a year yet, nor was I making that much. I didn't have parents who could co-sign for me because they didn't have good credit or any money, nor did we even have a good relationship to begin with, so asking them for help was one of the last things on my list because they were the thing I was trying to get away from in the first place. It felt like I didn't have a lot of strengths behind me to be seen as a desired tenant, besides my personality. While confronting my extremely high social anxiety at that time and my deep fear of upsetting people, I mustered it up within myself to start apartment searching, and it wasn't easy. My rejections began piling up, and I was starting to think that I wouldn't find a decent place to live. I was desperate. Oh my god. I was so desperate to find a place to live, because things at home were just extremely distressing for me, just due to a chaotic living environment, and inevitably, I just couldn't take it anymore. I just was craving a change. I was feeling hopeless, but then one of my best friends knew someone at the time who was renting out apartments, and she took us to look at 2 apartments in this building that she had available. Between the 2 of them, I ended up falling for the one that I've been living in since, because all the windows and the light that came in, I just thought it was a cute little apartment that I could see myself making my own. So not only did I like it, but I had a landlord right in front of me willing to let me move in as soon as I was ready. So of course I took it. It was a huge help to me, a huge milestone and a huge change. My best friend and her parents helped me move the few things that I did have saved up in my bedroom, which I'm really thankful for. Then came all the fun things with moving out for the first time. All I had in the beginning was a couch, no bed, and I was thrilled. I was happy with that. Then eventually, when I could afford a bed, I built the frame by myself, which was not easy. It was supposed to be a 2 or 3 person job, but I managed somehow to figure it out myself, which made me feel pretty good. Then came my first time grocery shopping on my own, first time I got to bring my childhood dog to visit my apartment, my first time getting my cat Scooter. my first girl dinners. This apartment was my first chance at starting my life over, and was finally the beginning of my journey of healing my past trauma and hurt and confronting the challenges that my pain and past bring me even today. It was the first time in my life that I felt like I had a safe place to call home. It was a shell shock after I removed myself from that environment surrounded by constant stressors and triggers. It was the first time in my life I was really able to sit in silence and address my PTSD. It was the first place I could comfortably have my friends over without fear. And now, 26 years old, I have what feels like a lifetime of memories here, wonderful and terrible. A few years ago, my boyfriend Christian moved in with me, and while we've managed to find a comfortable way to live in this small space together, there's a lot of times where it feels like we're kind of overflowing a bit, in the sense that we just have more stuff than we have the space for. We've definitely outgrown this space. We're a whole family now, so we just, we could use more space. We knew we needed more space, but it just kind of felt like a distant dream. We were honestly planning on staying here for at least another year or two, at least until we sorted our shit out or felt like we were ready to make the jump to move. It really wasn't until a recent series of events that unfolded that pushed me to my limits and just made me want to pack my shit and leave. In short, the entire building itself needs a lot of work, but it feels like the only solutions are often to put band-aids over the things rather than fixing the root problem itself, and it's turned into our problem. It's been really frustrating, feeling like I have no control in this situation, and that's just saying as little as possible. I was so stressed out for a while dealing with the things that we had to deal with here, and because of it all, and the impulsivity of my ADHD, you could say, I started curiously looking at available apartments online. And at first, Christian kind of reeled me back and thought it might be better to wait things out and be more prepared to do something so drastic so soon. But for some reason, I just couldn't shake the feeling of wanting to search anyways. After constantly refreshing websites and rental listings, I was starting to feel hopeless again, and when it seemed like nothing too promising was out there right now, I tried to keep my spirits up in hopes that maybe somehow we'd find a golden egg. Despite me being pretty pessimistic towards myself, I just had this feeling that that could happen for us. So, thanks to the influence of my friends after me venting my distress to them, I ended up taking a chance that day and inquiring about an apartment that I had no idea if we'd have a chance at, and at first it felt like we didn't. I went by myself to meet who I didn't realize was the leasing agent, and I felt like we had a good initial conversation about my living situation and even cats, but even so, I was told that there was already a wait list of 15 people, but that 2 evictions were potentially in the process. So I left with that and the paperwork to apply. She seemed nice, and I felt like it went well. So when I came back home, I told Christian all about it, and I just had this feeling and was like, F it, you want me to bring you there? So we went back, and what I realize now, looking back, she still didn't know who my other half was. When we went back, I think what nailed this interaction was the fact that I brought my boyfriend back in with me, because she didn't know who I was dating. Like, I could be sweet and all, but I could be dating some jerk for all she knows. But once she got to meet the both of us, we really hit things off. So well that before we left, we ran into a neighbor and his dog, and she came out and was like, "Hey, are you bothering my new tenant?" Jokingly, of course. And when we got back into the car, I was like, "Did you hear that?" Because she said it, not me. I immediately started filling out what I could on the applications. As soon as I could, I slam dunked those papers on her desk. And then we were in limbo, waiting to see if we would be approved for an apartment after we applied. She told us she would call us on that coming Friday, just a couple days after we applied. So that day came, and I was at work, and the whole morning I was just on edge, anticipating a phone call from her. Eventually, in the middle of checking out a customer, I was like, "I'm so sorry, but I gotta take this." And when I picked up, it was my dentist. Of all the days they could call! It was automated, so I hung up and didn't feel bad. I told myself I'd figure that out later. So, that same day, I kept waiting, and nothing. Then days went by, and nothing still. Then, once a whole week had passed since we applied, still nothing, and I gathered the courage to call her back and check in. I was at work again, and I was almost too scared to call. I was dying to know the answer, but I was also scared of it. But I finally called her. No fucking answer! Ugh! Now I gotta wait for her to call me back. Again. I left a voicemail, but my friend and coworker told me that I should call her back in an hour or so. So I waited, in the meantime, for that hour to pass, and my god was it stressful, and still nothing. So eventually, I decided to call her again. And this time, she picked up. So, after all that anticipation...
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for!
We were accepted! We were accepted! But we are still in limbo again of when exactly we'll be moving out now. And I know I shouldn't be too disappointed because we're still going to be able to move in. It's just we don't know when. It initially sounded like we could get in pretty soon, which is exactly what I want, but it's kind of on the fence, and I just have to wait for another phone call again in about a few weeks. So we're waiting, and there's more to it than that, but what I can say is, I know that we'll be moving out, and that's such a good feeling. I just should be happy that it's happening at all. But I just hope it happens sooner than later. And looking back at everything now, it feels like every awful or questionable thing leading up to this point has been for a reason. Had it not been for our bathroom ceiling leaking dirty brown water on our heads, and the frustrations that came with that as a result, all those things pushed me to do something about it. And not trying to say that Christian was wrong in thinking that maybe we should wait, but I trusted my gut when I was apartment searching. And I had to tell myself to just trust the process and hang in there as we went along. Looking back in the grand scheme of things, it almost feels like the universe somehow conjured up a way for things to play out in our favor. It feels like this was meant to happen. And we deserve so much better. My little studio apartment has served its purpose for me, as my therapist said. And now it's time to go. I'm gonna miss my little apartment, but I am so looking forward to our new place. It's gonna be more space than we know what to do with, especially coming out of a little studio apartment. And I really don't have a lot of furniture, even now, but what I do have fills out the small space that we have perfectly. But once we have even more space to work with, it's gonna feel empty again. That, and I will be losing 2 big pieces of furniture along the way. Our shitty pull-out couch, for those of you who may have seen it in my Christmas vlog.
Oh my god. Yes, we live like this. Not meant to be used every day.
Is not coming out in one piece. It's hanging on by a thread, and it's just so awful to sleep on that we just now use it as a way of storing our mattress, and we put our mattress on the floor to sleep on now. So we're gonna tear apart the couch and toss it. No more couch till we save up for another. And my drawing desk. It's held up okay where it is, but it's barely hanging on. And if I attempt to pick it up, it'll crumble to dust. So when we move, no more desk either. I just can't stress how joyous I am about finally being able to move out. I just feel really thankful that my life played out this way, especially comparing to how things used to be in my life before. I had a good hearty cry about it in the shower, honestly, in a euphoric way, just a really thankful way. I'm just really glad that things played out this way, just my life and everything, especially compared to how things used to be before. Neither me or Christian could have acquired this place without the other, and it feels surreal that we were qualified for this amount of space. And by no means does that mean we're living fancy or we're doing super well, but thankfully we meet the criteria for this place, and it just feels hard to believe that for the both of us. It is gonna cost us more, but I'm so thankful that this horrible mess turned into such a delightful opportunity for us, and it'll be so worth it when it's all over. I'm so excited for the holidays in our new neighborhood. I'm excited for the cats to finally have more space to run around. I'm grateful that I get to start this new chapter with Christian. I'm grateful we finally get to have a space for a proper bed and not to have our bedroom and living room be conjoined as one. My cats are gonna have to get used to stairs. Oh, and just because I have to show somebody this, I showed my friends already, but I got the cutest thing for our future apartment, even before I knew we were accepted. I just had this inkling that maybe we would be, so I impulsively bought this beautiful cherry blossom tree. It's so pretty, and it's so pink. It could blind you with how pink it is. I love it. And on top of that, I found a matching wreath. It's perfect for the spring, so I am just so hoping that we move out sooner than later. But yeah, so I don't know what kind of morals you might have derived from this video, but if you are going through a stressful situation, just try your best to hang in there and stay positive, because when you make your way through it, you might realize things were a blessing in disguise. Okay, I think I talked enough now. Thank you for watching. If you did, it means the world to me. It really does. And yeah, I'll see you next time.